Welcome to Waves, West Alabama, Voices Echoing Success, the podcast where local voices inspire big impact. Brought to you monthly by the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama, this is your source for stories of leadership, innovation, and success.
And welcome into this episode of Waves, West Alabama Voices Echoing Success. I'm Kyle South with the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama, and today we are honored to have as our guest Chad Tindol with the University of Alabama. Chad, thank you for coming on with us today.
Glad to be here. I was speaking to a group a couple of weeks ago and told them there is no community that is successful without great schools and no school that's successful without a great community around it. So we're happy to be part of West Alabama and happy to be part of this podcast.
Well, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today is that kind of state of the university, where things in education are headed, and how the community can play a bigger role in that when we look to student retention and all the things that kind of go into that higher education model and the lifeblood of our community here locally, economically, is often driven by the university and its student population. So thank you again. You know, we'll jump right in. Kind of give us an outlook on kind of where we've been, where we're headed enrollment-wise. We've seen a ton of growth over the last 10 to 15 years, but we also feel those pressures nationally on kind of higher education, and some might even say an enrollment cliff. What does that look like here at the university?
Yeah, so I think the main thing it looks like is competition, right? Certainly the numbers behind the enrollment cliff are correct. We know how many 18-year-olds there will be this coming fall. We know how many 18-year-olds there will be 17 falls from now. Not much can affect that. So we've been monitoring those numbers for a while. I had the pleasure of being in a program when I was at the system office in 2016 that did a lot of digging into the enrollment cliff, because at that point it was only 10 years away. We knew how many 8-year-olds there were. And I'm happy to say that some of the initial projections of how that was going to affect colleges were maybe slightly overstated, because there's a lot of geography to the enrollment cliff. And thankfully, us being in the South, we're not quite as impacted as, say, the Rust Belt or the Northeast. And then there were some projections that were part of that initial kind of disaster reporting, if you call it that, that maybe underestimated the extent to which some of our immigrant population were going to become part of the American middle class and start attending college in higher numbers. So not as dire as initially projected, but it's certainly a time for colleges to focus on their ROI, to focus on the benefit that they bring to their individual students, and go out and fight for those students. And we've been doing that for more than a decade, maybe almost 2 decades now, and thanks to the leadership of Bob Witt and Judy Bonner and Stuart Bell, we've done it quite well, and I think we're prepared to continue doing that.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, and through all of that growth, we have not lowered our expectations of our young people. I'm fearful that I wouldn't get in college if it were trying to apply these days with maybe my academic record back in the day.
Well, we hear that a lot, and I grew up in Elba, so I understand that. And a lot of that out-of-state growth, it is a little bit of a sad commentary that the state of Alabama isn't producing as many 4-year ready students as we should be.
Yep.
And I know we've got great people working on that, great people like Mike Daria here in Tuscaloosa working on that. And it's something that needs to be improved within the state. But we're lucky to be able to attract these students from out of state, because they're future workers. That's workforce development. That's economic development. They spend a lot of money while they're here, which is not such a bad thing either. And their parents love to come visit. So
yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit more of that when we start talking about the new experiential learning aspect of that 4-year degree. One thing that was passed along to me maybe a couple of years ago was maybe that some of this enrollment cliff was due to the recession years of 8, 9, and 10. And as we get to those children that were not born during those tough economic times, that's where we see that population kind of lessen. I don't know if there's any
No, that's
validity to that or not, but
that's exactly right. The reduction that was initially estimated at like 14% among 18-year-olds is estimated to be the fall of 2026. So, yep, 2008 plus 18 is 2026. And I think for economic reasons, birth rates have gone down, maybe for other reasons as well. You can make more babies, but you can't make more 16-year-olds. So.
Yep. Well, and that just fascinated me when somebody told me that, because I'd never put that logic, kind of thought through it. And so it has a real impact. And, I think we're situated in a great place. We are bringing in a lot of national students. I think we've been kind of that school of choice for California, New York, New Jersey, it seems like. It's a little bit frustrating when I go out to the golf course and can't get a tee time because everybody brings their family into town too. But that's a heck of a good problem to have.
It certainly is. And again, it's something we've tried very hard to be proactive about for more than 10 years now. And when you look at that out-of-state population, there's a couple of things that jump out to you sometimes. One is direct flights to Birmingham, Alabama. Those help, right?
Yep.
Places like Chicago, Dallas, Houston. And those are also places that are not as impacted by that demographic cliff as other places.
Yep.
So I think our folks have prepared us well. And Matt McClendon and his recruiting team go out there and hit that hard every single day.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like we're in a great place. And, you see new faces every year. And but our enrollment continues to kind of jump up just a little bit, inch by inch. And I think where the vision of those that you had talked about before, laying that infrastructure for that growth has been awfully helpful.
Yeah, certainly the building plan that people, envisioned with our campus master planning 20 years ago has paid off. People love the way this campus looks, and there's a reason that they do.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, a lot of that kind of had to develop some new strategies kind of coming out of COVID into a whole new world, right? Where
I would agree with that.
Online learning and all those kinds of things.
I think that, I think COVID actually helped us. And I looked at the application numbers again this morning preparing for this. They're up again over last year. I think we've had basically 60,000 applications submitted for next year's freshman class. But COVID, during that time, you really saw Stuart Bell's heart for students, because he would come in my office almost every morning and say, now remember, COVID is not in our mission statement. Our mission statement is teaching, research, and service. And our folks really did focus on that. When I think back about it, and I don't know if there's a way to research this or prove this, but when the world closed down March 5 years ago, we held an in-person class at the University of Alabama in July. I don't know of anyone who did that any earlier. We held an in-person commencement the first weekend, I believe it was, in August of 2020. So again, I don't know of anyone who did that earlier. And I say commencement, I think it was about 137 ceremonies, because we had to divide everybody by 6 feet. And
doing it responsibly, right?
And I was asked after that, well, did you feel afraid? Were you concerned about anything? And I said, the only threat was being smothered by some mom or dad who was so happy to be there.
Yeah,
because that's the first word on the sign, right? Teaching.
Yep.
And the parents know that, and the students know that, and they see that sort of concern for the student experience. And I think that's paid a lot of dividends down the road.
And there's no way to give that day back to that young person that has accomplished so much in life ahead of them if you delayed or put that off down the road. So
well said.
Kudos to the university and everybody that stood strong through that very troubling time.
Thank you.
I think it, like you said, it's paid dividends on the back end, and we're still seeing some of the positive impacts of kind of making sure that we're educating our kids through that. But you mentioned something as part of those kind of three pillars that I want to shift over to, and that's research. The university is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing R1 institution in the country. What does that look like for the future? How much more could we see coming down the pike in the way of research on campus and off? As the chamber, we want all of those commercialization opportunities to be built within our community here, and I see that as potential growth for Tuscaloosa and the surrounding areas in times to come, and all of that's pretty much generated out of the university.
I think there will be continued growth, and it's worth kind of looking back at that 10 years of growth. Before Dr. Bell got here, we were averaging roughly $70 million a year in externally funded research. Last year, under Brian Bedoris and his team, we hit $269.9 million. So three times plus.
Yeah, almost four
per annual amount brought in, and the way the university has done that, I think, will pay dividends in years to come because we've concentrated on areas that are really important to the state of Alabama and the West Alabama community. And we've certainly, we've done research in a lot of areas, but when you look at the major things going on, when you look at water research, when you look at materials research that lends itself so much to mining and battery technology, transportation research, rural health research, there are others, but there's so much concentration and effort put on things that are going to have a practical impact on this state and its economy. And I think it's paid dividends already, and it's going to continue to pay dividends.
Yeah, that part of what's going on campus excites me probably more so than anything besides Alabama basketball this week. So, but we'll get to that in a few minutes too. Additionally, including those things that you mentioned, the high performance computing system and all of the kind of partnerships that can bring to campus and surrounding areas. As we see an economy that's moving into machine learning and AI and all the things, I think it just gives us so much potential and growth. And then, supplementing all the things that are going on, federal government related in Huntsville. We are the human resource pipeline for a lot of what's going on up there. And
well said. Yeah. The High Performance Computing Center, I think, is really a testament to telling the government what you can do to benefit the economy in the area. That's roughly a $100 million facility, and it's paid for about half by the federal government and about half by the state government. And how often 2 or 3 years ago did those two entities agree on something that readily? So it's a testament to, I think, good leadership and for the university kind of offering something that's so practical, both sides have to agree on it.
Yeah, and I just, the way that, the global economy is kind of moving in that direction, I think it's just a Pandora's box ready to be opened with the potential and the opportunities that will come from that. So great things. Again, we're biased. We want all of those research opportunities to be have the potential to be commercialized here locally so that we can grow jobs, and especially in that knowledge-based economy of the future. And to be quite honest with you, the way that we look at things is even our manufacturing base that we're really good at here locally is becoming more of those knowledge-based jobs, and they're going to have to be constantly credentialed and reskilled as there's more of that computing going on through that as well.
That's again well said. And we graduate, I think it's been 9,000 degrees or so every year for the last several years. I'd love for every one of those 9,000 students to stay as local as possible. And it takes two things to keep them here. One, remember, we've recruited them to this place once, right?
Yep.
So they have some love here, but they need a job,
Yep.
and they need a quality of life that they're looking for. And our community has done a lot towards quality of life. I mean, you look at
Yep.
the public parks we have and the events downtown and what Visit Tuscaloosa does at attracting events and the amphitheater. Those are the kind of things that young people want to see in their community. So if we can add the jobs to it, there's no stopping us.
Well, and that's, as it relates to the chamber, one of our big initiatives is talent retention. working through Innovate Alabama and other partners to hopefully open those young people's eyes to other aspects of our community, not just on campus, but so that we have a good shot at keeping them here, and we just want our fair share.
That's good.
But as the state looks at it as an investment, obviously that's broader than just here in our community. But we want to open their eyes to those opportunities here too, and whether it be the Fuel Alabama, Fuel Tuscaloosa program with interns in the summer. That I think our community has supported like no other around the state, or whether it's with the new Anchor program that was facilitated by Innovate Alabama, that we hope to do more of the leadership type out in the community with the young people at each of our institutions. So
I think it is. It does have the potential to be hunting on a baited field, which is a good thing in this case, right?
I like that.
Because these students at age 18 decided, I want to be in Tuscaloosa,
Right.
Alabama, and flew from New Jersey or Illinois or wherever it is, or drove up from Elba or Op. And we need to give them every reason to continue staying here at 22.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, part of that, the university and kind of the curriculum is shifting to an aspect of experiential learning as being a requirement of a degree. Tell me a little bit about that, what you envision that looking like, what those opportunities will be for our student base, and how the community can be an integral part of it.
Sure, thank you. So we have been looking at our curriculum for several years now, and primarily what the academicians, and I sometimes include myself in that and sometimes don't, but what they call your general ed curriculum, which we call the core back in the old day, right? And in our core, we have tried to trim the number of hours a little bit because we see a lot of students who want to graduate with 2 degrees or multiple minors with a single degree. They're interested in a lot of areas. So we want to give them the opportunity to do that within the curriculum. And then along with that, we want to make sure our curriculum is as up to date for preparing them for the world that they are going into as possible. So there has been a focus on experiential learning. The new core curriculum, which Provost Jim Dalton and his team have put together, will go into effect this coming fall, called Built by Bama. So it's got a nice little athletic ring, championship ring to it, right? And then the experiential learning part will go into effect in fall of 26. And what that's going to be in practicality is various methods of hands-on learning, right? So there will be opportunities for the business community in terms of internships, of students working and learning there, because we want to make sure these students don't just learn how to build a bridge from a book, right?
Yep.
They need to go out and experience it, see what the working world is like, and that'll make them better students. That'll provide them a better education and ultimately provide a better workforce for this state.
No doubt. The exciting part of that is getting them out into the workforce and developing, oftentimes we hear about the soft skill side of it. That's hard to teach in a classroom, right? You develop that kind of through experience. And that is one of the things that we hear the most, K-12 migrating into kind of manufacturing settings is where how can we teach young people the soft skills that they need to be a good employee?
There's a lot of people judging our return on their tuition investment every day. I mean, certainly the students do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But parents do as well. They take that seriously, and the workplace world does as well. And I hear every day, even from Auburn friends, how well prepared their young graduates they hired from Alabama are, and we want to continue to hear that.
Yeah, let's wave that banner as much as we can, right? Well, let's shift it just a little bit over to the success that we've seen athletically. Obviously, football's been it's driven part of that enrollment increase, in my opinion. People want to go where they see success. And now that's migrated across a lot of the athletic landscape on campus. Obviously, this week, looking at NCAA tournament and Coach Oates and all the success that he's seen over the last couple of years. but there is that kind of pressure out there from an NIL perspective, and going from a university enrollment of 17,000 not too awful long ago to where we've grown to today, but we're competing with other institutions that have been where we're at for a long time. So the alumni base is bigger. Oftentimes there are contributors that, I think we've got 2 billionaires, public billionaires in the entire state of Alabama. And so how do we compete in that landscape as it continues to change going forward?
Well, I think the thing you do to compete athletically is to make sure you have the best folks in charge of that function as you can. Stuart Bell has been the head of the SEC presidents for a couple of years, so he's been right there by the side of Greg Sankey as they're making a lot of these decisions. We're blessed to be part of, I think, the best conference and the best led conference in the United States, so I feel secure for that reason. And then our athletic department with Greg Byrne and his team are just prepared to do a great job. I've been here 19 years. I think that means 6 football national championships, softball, a couple of golf in there, and and hopefully come the second weekend in April, maybe the first this year, we're going to add that basketball national championship we've been looking for.
Hopefully so. Just to give you a little context, growing up just up the road, my dad was more of a basketball fan than I would say even football, and so the heydays back in the early 90s with Coach Sanderson and those kinds of things were what I grew up experiencing, and it's been nice to kind of revitalize some of that energy around campus and throughout the community.
I'd kind of like to see the nickname Plaid Palace return myself as well. When I came here as a freshman, the year before, Bill Curry had been the football coach and hadn't been as successful as we'd hoped. But Wimp Sanderson had us blowing and going. I think we won the SEC tournament just about every year I was in school.
That's right.
It's a lot of excitement to that. And
fun times.
Yep.
We were reminiscing on some of those times over the weekend, this past weekend with the SEC tournament, and probably for the first time as a conference, it feels like we're even stronger than those groups back in the early 90s when Wimp was racking up all those tournament wins. So
I think you're right. Yeah, it's the SEC is a tough place to play. Have we played a team that's not ranked since January?
In a month and a half, I think. So, but that's one thing that I want to point out too is I think the university, the Greek we have done a good job of scheduling things throughout the year so that we keep something kind of going all the time over the weekends. We hear it a lot from our hospitality members that, if we could just do what we do on the weekend, Sunday through Thursday, we really keep the community engaged in a lot of things that are going on campus, even beyond the athletic events.
Yeah, Stephen Hood in Student Life started building a calendar for the local community about a year ago, and one of the things he started tracking was parent weekends. So some of these are our parent weekends as an institution, but some are the fraternity sorority set the dates of it. And when you look at that spring calendar now, there is a something or maybe a half dozen somethings every weekend throughout the spring. And it gives such a vibrancy to downtown, to the restaurant scene. The hotels love us.
No doubt.
And, they love to give us credit for that. So sometimes these are sororities and fraternities making those decisions, but we're happy to take the credit anyway.
We'll keep doing whatever we're doing because it is generating traffic that like no other time we've seen, and I think a lot of that is because of the coordination that has taken place in scheduling those events out. So job well done there as far as keeping commerce moving in the city of Tuscaloosa, right?
Yeah, those the football games. I looked at the economic report the other day that Dr. Addy and his team brought out. The average impact of a home football game is now $29.9 million in economic impact, which is fantastic. But you can only have 7 or so of those a year, and we want to replicate that in other ways as much as possible.
Yeah, it's again, I don't. there are people around the state, around the country that are very jealous of that impact that you guys have on our community, and it helps us all.
Roll Tide to that.
Roll Tide. The last thing that I want to touch on, and as we kind of have had the announcement that Dr. Bell is retiring this summer and coming to the end of his tenure, which, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the longest tenured presidents that we've experienced at the Capstone. Tell me what you think. You've been right there alongside for a lot of that time, maybe all of that time. What do you think 20 years from now that impact looks like? What is his stamp on the university?
I think Stuart Bell will go down as one of the best presidents we've had in the history of this university. And I mean, you think back, there are 4 or 5 just true history makers that have sat in that office, right? I mean, certainly Dr. Denny, that took it from a very small school to a nationally prominent school. Dr. Rose, who integrated this university peacefully when so many others failed at that. Dr. Witt, who had the vision to roughly double it in size, and not just the vision to do that, but the acumen to get it done. And Stuart Bell has had that sort of transformative moment as president at the university. Over 10 years, I think these 10 years will be remembered as times of records and relationships. New enrollment records almost every year, it seems. When I came into this position 6 years ago, he said, I want you to work on in-state enrollment. And we've had 6 consecutive falls of increasing resident in-state students, along with our overall record and retention records and graduation records and all those things you want to see academically. We talked about research and how that's tripled or more over this time here. Fundraising is something we didn't touch on as much, but we're nearing the end of a $1.8 billion capital campaign, biggest in the history of this state.
It's amazing.
And it's going to create, how many hundreds and dozens of scholarships and faculty positions that are going to pay benefits for decades to come. But those are numbers, and numbers are important because they're ways of measuring what we do. But I like to think behind those numbers, those are lives impacted, right? I was a first-gen college student, lucky to come to this place because of scholarships and parents who cared about what they wanted to see me succeed and do. And these scholarships are creating, these students we're recruiting, a lot of them are of that same type, right? First-gen students who need an opportunity to step ahead in life. And, a lot of our materials out of student life refer to the Alabama experience, and that's so many things you've talked about, these great events, great opportunities, Greek life for some kids, not Greek life for others. But I think we had almost 700 student organizations this fall, not 700 events, 700 organizations having weekly events. These things make a difference in people's lives. And when you look back on Susan and Stuart Bell's time in this community, I think people are going to think those are folks who cared for this place, and the care that they had for it mattered, and it impacted this community positively. They're a blessing to this community.
Well, and you said it very well, but I think Miss Susan's imprint will be left and felt for a long time as well. She seems to be involved in a little bit of everything, and you don't always see that from administrative level.
She's very quietly in charge.
Just to kind of close things out a little bit here, we do have several new investments coming online on campus. One that hits pretty close to home is the Performing Arts Center. That'll be coming online, I think, next year.
It's coming out of the ground pretty quickly.
Yeah,
yes.
And my daughter is very much interested in all of the performing arts and musical theater. She's that kind of kid, and to see that erected on campus, been very jealous of some of our peers around the Southeast in having that, and I think that's going to be a huge asset for us for a different sector of student coming.
And I think you think back to that Bryce property, which was still behind a chain link fence when I got here 19 years ago. and the way it's transformed into this hub of scientific research. I mean, the High Performance Computing Center will be out there on it. But it's nice, having been a liberal arts humanities major myself, an English major. It's nice to see that bit of the arts is going to sit right in the middle of that. And kudos to the Randall family and the Randall Welcome Center.
That was my next one on the list. Is we couldn't go without talking about the Welcome Center and what that means to you guys. It's a crazy statistic that if you ever get a kid on campus, the actual retention rate that's built in, that they come and go to school here. And I think those investments have made a huge impact on kind of that experience when visiting.
I think people recognize it when you care about them and you put your best foot forward. And I think they definitely see that at the Welcome Center. That building is just incredible.
Well, we appreciate all that you guys do from the university for our community. We appreciate the partnership that we have at the Chamber with the university. And we want to know how we can better serve that student population as they mature and hopefully become community members as well. So
I think the next big thing we can plan is that championship parade in about 4 weeks.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Looking forward to it.
Well, I know that we've got a couple of big hurdles between here and there, but it's an exciting time of the year, and we greatly appreciate, again, everything you guys do, and would be remiss if we didn't give them a big roll tide here to close it out.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Thank you for joining us on Waves, West Alabama Voices Echoing Success, the official podcast of the Chamber of Commerce of West Alabama. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next month as we continue to amplify the voices shaping the future of West Alabama. For more stories and updates, visit us online at westalabamachamber.com or follow us on social media. Until next time, keep making waves.
Alabama One, a partner of West Alabama Chamber, offers a full suite of financial products, including checking and savings accounts, personal loans for home, auto, and recreational vehicles, as well as land and equipment financing. Go to alabama1.org/what's your one to learn more. Equal housing opportunity.